Welcome back to another episode of So You're Ready to Date. And this is a great one. This is a one I think that everybody is going to be able to relate to, and that is dealing with disappointment when it comes to your dating journey, your dating experience. So I think this is going to be one. Grab your journal, grab a notebook. You're going to take some notes. We're going to give you some ways to kind of not necessarily combat the disappointment, but maybe deal better with the disappointment that's inevitable in any kind of dating journey. So we just want you to be as best prepared for all facets of this experience that is dating.
Really? Disappointments when you're dating? Who would have thought? You have this fantasy, you're going to go on this first date. You're going to meet your Prince Charming or your princess or whoever it is that you're dating, and that's fine. You get this idea, you're going to go out on a date and you're going to meet the one. It's going to be life altering and you're going to be ready to get married after that first date. And then we come back to reality and realize that that's probably not going to happen. And you might have to filter through an awful lot of bad dates or dates that aren't going to end the way that you think they are before you find the one. So today we're going to talk all about that. And I think we'll dive right in and talk about maybe what happens if you get ghosted.
Yeah, that was something that feels like a few years ago was maybe we just didn't have a word to call it. It was just, nobody responded back. You just maybe stopped talking and you didn't necessarily have the verbiage to put around that, but nothing feels ickier, if that's the right word to say it, than just thinking you had a connection with somebody, being able to kind of talk and chat, and then just radio silence, crickets, nothing coming back from that other person.
Right. And we've mentioned in previous episodes that maybe you shouldn't do the ghosting. It's really nice if you tell the person that you don't want to see them again, or that you're just not into them, or that you'd make better friends, or whatever the case may be. And we'll talk about that in a future episode. But just because we're advising you not to do that doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to do that to you.
Yes. Well, like I had an experience lately where we were texting, we were going to get together for a date. I had to cancel because my schedule changed, and we've just kind of stopped texting. So it's like we've mutually ghosted each other. So I think sometimes ghosting, for the most part, is not probably the most adult things to do. But if you have both kind of like stopped responding, it just didn't feel like the spark was there. I don't think it's always necessarily requires a conversation if you have nobody's putting forth any kind of effort. But if somebody has been continually reaching out to you, trying to check in, trying to maybe set up another date, and you're just intentionally not responding back, that's when we need to have those grown-up adult conversations and be like, hey, I appreciate, again, we've gone over this script before, like I had a good time, or it was nice chatting to you, meeting you. I just don't think this is a match. That clean break is better all around for everybody.
Very good point. I like to sit back and say, how would I feel if I were the one on the other end of that situation, right? Because chances are at some point you might be the one on the other end of that situation. And so actually that's what we're talking about. So that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But if you're the one on the other end of that situation, how would you want to be treated? And again, we'll get into that later. But when that happens to you, take a deep breath and know that it's not you, it's them. We're talking about stepping up and having grown-up adult conversations. Sometimes that's hard for people. And if you're being ghosted, chances are it's hard for them to say, hey, I'm just not into you right now. And that's okay. There could be a million reasons for that. And remember, there are millions of people that you can meet, and thousands are going to like you. And there's going to be even more people that you're not meant to be with. And the sooner you find that out, the better. So it's okay if it's not right for that romantic relationship. But when they ghost you, it's just, that's on them, not on you. And they are the ones not wanting to have that grown-up conversation.
I think it's okay to have like that last text being say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I thought we had a connection. Looks like maybe we didn't. I wish you the best of luck. And letting that be the way that you move on. I would just be a little bit careful because sometimes we send those texts hoping that that's going to be the one that gets through and really gets that person to want to respond back. So if you can do it from a sense of, I just need to have the closure to close that door, be done with that relationship so that I can move on to dating the next person, then I think go ahead, send that final text that says, hey, I'm blocking you. I'm done trying to reach out to you. I wish you the best of luck. If you know that could be, yes, I'm done, I'm shutting that door. If you're doing it with like some glimmer of hope that they might want to respond back, then I would just say, leave it alone. Let it be a lesson that not everybody is ready to have those adult conversations. And then put your attention and effort towards that next date, towards that next person who might be a better match for you.
I like that advice. And really, that comes down to releasing any and all expectations. How are you showing up for you? Whatever text you send at the end is not in hopes of a response from somebody else, but as a, how am I showing up in the world, and how do I want to show up, and who do I want to be? So if you're being ghosted and you do decide to send that final text, I love what you said about not wanting a response back and not expecting a response back and being okay if you don't get one, and moving on and leaving it alone if you're not going to be okay if you don't get that response back.
Well, I think expectations are a huge part of like this whole dating scenario where like you have these expectations. You're like, yeah, this is going to be a fun first date, or we've really connected when we chatted on the phone. So it's natural to have those expectations, and that's, I think, part of what keeps us excited about trying to do this again when maybe things don't go the way they are, because we have this expectation that maybe the next one is going to be kind of that better fit, that one that's going to be that little bit of a spark. But I think sometimes, it can get hard not to get so wrapped up in those expectations that we lose sight of, am I having fun? Do I enjoy the company of the people that I'm dating? All these other aspects that come into dating when we're only so focused on, I got to get to that second date. I got to make sure I do X, Y, or Z. So yeah, always managing our expectations when it comes to this dating process.
Yes, for sure. For sure, because you can lose the fun very quickly if you don't keep track of what your expectations are and where they're at, and just putting the expectations on yourself and the fun that you can have in the way that you want to show up versus putting the expectation on what the other person is going to think or do, because ultimately that's outside of our control. Which kind of leads into the next point of what happens when you have this really great first date, you feel like there's a lot of chemistry, and they end up not wanting that second date. They politely decline. They don't ghost you, but they say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I don't think that this is for me.
Yeah, that one stings, doesn't it?
For sure.
Because I think it's one of those things. Do you always want to be the one who lets somebody down, or do you want to be the one who is? I think there's this idea that if we're the one doing the, I don't want this, then that maybe it feels a little better. But I think there's always that sense of you don't ever want to kind of let somebody down, especially if, it wasn't a terrible time, but you just know that it's not going to be a match. And I think you mentioned it, I think in the beginning, Angie, where it's like, we have maybe this expectation it's going to be this fairy tale. And sometimes romantic comedies, for as much fun as they are, have kind of ruined our idea of how dating and relationships and how that whole process goes. That, yeah, it's going to be this meet cute. We bump in line to each other at the Starbucks, and it's a happily ever after from there then on out. But we're going to have these situations where they're like, oh, and maybe it's nothing you did. There is sometimes you could have had, like you said, the best first date, but there's just not this chemistry. There's just not this connection that maybe that other person was looking for.
And there is so many different reasons that connection cannot be there. Maybe you were talking about future goals and you want to live in Alaska, and the other person says, I can't do that. And that's what it is. So remembering to step back and just not take it personally. Just because somebody doesn't want a second date with you, there is nothing wrong with you. You are still as deserving as ever. You are going to find the right person. It's just that not every date is going to be the right fit for you.
Yeah. And I think that's a hard place to kind of be, is in that space of like, it always feels like you're just, what did I do wrong? And trying to like dissect the date and figure out where maybe you went wrong. And I think not that that's necessarily a bad thing to do, but I would advise against trying to do a post-mortem of the date and trying to pinpoint where you feel like it exactly went wrong. Because like Angie said, it could be something that's like, I did not like the cologne they were wearing. And that could be enough for some people to be like, yep, nope, this is not a thing. Or so, and not to go back and ask for specific reasons why. I think that just is a pursuit in self-flagellation. And I think letting them just have their reasons without having to explain anything further. It was one date. It was probably an hour out of your life. Sometimes for me in those situations would be like, okay, maybe I dodged a bullet here. Maybe I dodged a relationship that really wasn't going to be for me. And now I can still put my time and attention and focus on people who might potentially want a second date with me.
I love that. And I think it's important to put that in perspective and to focus on all of the good points and flip the script a little bit. When you flip the script and you take it off of the what's wrong with me to the, well, I dodged a bullet, or well, I'm going out to find the next, I know what I'm trying to say, I don't really know how to say it, but I'm going out to find the people that match all of the things on my checklist. And there must have been something on the checklist that didn't match. And that's okay. And so when you flip the script and you think about it from that perspective, it can take some of the sting out of that.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think kind of, it can just be an off day. And I think sometimes just giving people that grace of just feel like, sometimes maybe we met on a day that they had like a really rough day at work, and finding those reasons to maybe talk about it. This might be a great opportunity to grab your friends and go out for drinks and just be like, hey, I need to talk about this because I can't talk about it with the person that I'm really upset about. And letting your community, letting your group, your circle, your people kind of come around you and bolster you. Let them build you up again. Let them say, no, you're awesome. You're wonderful. You are deserving of finding that person who is a better match for you. And leaning into the people who are going to be there and support you and kind of build you up so that maybe it'll lessen the sting a little bit that this wasn't quite the love match you were hoping for.
And if you don't have that community, let us be your community.
Yes.
Because we know that you are more than deserving and that there is nothing wrong with you just because you didn't get a second date.
Yes. And remember, much rather not have the second date than be like 5 dates or 6 months or a year in, and they decide, yeah, well, I guess I'm just not feeling it anymore. So remember, perspective about all of this.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Which now leads us into the third point that we kind of wanted to talk about with dealing with disappointment. What if you've been catfished?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is probably going to date me more than anything. We're like, I remember the show. I watched enough episodes of Catfish, which has led to why I have that like 1 week rule. Because I watched enough of those episodes of people who cameras didn't work. No, I can't meet, not anything like that. I'm like, that's why I have the rules I have, because I am bound and determined. If you're a catfish, we're finding out now, not 6 months when I've invested all this time and energy into a text screen.
Right, put your energy someplace useful. But that can be disappointing if you don't have a 1 week rule and you've been texting or talking for a longer period of time and you show up and the person on the other side of the table isn't who you thought you were meeting.
Well, and I think when we talk about catfishing, I think we do have this idea that it's like some 13-year-old boy or girl or somebody hiding behind a screen, and they put up pictures from somebody that they pulled off of the internet. And I think, yes, that is one aspect of it, but there's also this aspect of people using photos from like 10 years ago, or people using photos where maybe it doesn't put the best representation of how they look and how they are now. And I think that can be in a really real sense where talking with my sister, she had a friend who was online dating. He had pictures, and when he showed up was really different. I mean, she could tell it was still the same person, but yeah, a lot of things did not match up in the pictures that they were using on the dating website. So again, it doesn't have to be that they're a completely different person, but there is that little bit of misrepresentation if you're using like high school pictures and you're a 40-year-old person. So I think that's enough of catfishing to be like, but I wanted to see who you were. I wanted, for safety reasons. That's a big, big thing. I'm like, but that's not who I'm dating. That's not who I was expecting to see. So that like I said, doesn't have to be big. Sometimes it's those little things that throw off what we see.
Right. And when you show up there and that happens, that can be a disappointment. And so for a situation like that, number one rule, you don't owe anything to anybody. So feel free to use your lifeline. Feel free to refer back to our safety episode and use some of those measures to end the date early and walk out and keep yourself safe, and also be respectful of the other person if it is something that they just maybe misrepresented themselves a little bit. But again, that can be disappointing. So how to kind of deal with that disappointment can be to sit back and remember, one of the big things for me is to remember that their actions are a representation of them, not a representation of me. How am I showing up? Am I showing up in a way that is in alignment with who I am and who I want to be? And as long as those things are in alignment, I can remove myself and say, okay, that's a representation of them. And while that's disappointing because they didn't meet my expectations, I'm still okay. And that's something that helps me get through some of those difficult situations or when some of that stuff happens.
Well, and two, I think nothing brings out those insecurities other than trying to find 5 or 6 photos of yourself to put on something that you're going to be judged immediately for. And I've noticed that as I've kind of started dating, the whole dating process is that, man, even the most confident of people, every once in a while, that little bit of insecurity you can see kind of bleed through. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I think you can love yourself and be happy with where you are, but there's always going to be those moments of insecurity. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is there's this insecurity of, I'm not good enough as I am. I need to represent myself in this particular way so that people will like me. And so again, this is not about you. Remember, this is about how somebody else is seeing themselves. So yes, you can be saying something kind of like, hey, you're not really how you represented yourself online. I don't feel comfortable continuing this date, and you can certainly leave. Or you can take a chance and be like, okay, do I feel off enough about this that I need to leave? Or can I give them maybe an opportunity to see if their personality shines through, and maybe that will change anything? But again, you don't owe them that opportunity to do that. If for whatever reason you're getting those alarm bells, you're getting that warning that maybe this is not great, you're like, I don't know, sometimes if you can't represent yourself truthfully in the beginning, I worry about how that kind of bleeds into what could potentially be the rest of a relationship.
Which I'm going to go back and hit on 2 points that you said. Number one, trust your gut. Trust your gut completely, wholly, and without question. If your gut tells you that it's a bad idea to be somewhere and continue something, trust that and make an exit strategy. And number two, you don't owe anybody anything. So the beauty in this is it may end up being a hard conversation. There might be some things in there that are unpleasant, but you get to decide. You get to decide how you feel about it. You get to decide how you're going to react, and you get to decide what choice you're going to make. They also get to decide for themselves, but you have the power to make that decision for yourself. So you get to decide what's best for you, and you also get to decide how you interpret the situation. So we're here to provide some guidance and some advice and maybe help you through those disappointments, but ultimately knowing and taking control of what you have control of and understanding what your personal control is a fabulous place to be, is a fabulous state of mind to be in, and will help you overcome all of these disappointments.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's, again, why we say that first meeting needs to be in public, because I think you could find like any bar, any kind of restaurant, stuff like that, the staff are well versed in not great first dates. So I think you could come up to any bartender, any hostess, any server, anybody at a restaurant and be like, hey, this was not what I signed up for. Can you help me out? And I think they would fall over themselves trying to help you stay safe and kind of keep you in that space. So again, this is why I go back and listen to the safety episode if you haven't, because when you come into those situations, if you have a game plan, if you have an idea of what you know, it's going to be exponentially easier for you to actually do what's in your best interests.
And when you get done doing what's in your best interest, whether that's walking away, whether that's sending that final text, whether that is addressing a situation where, hey, I feel like there was some lack of transparency here, sit back, celebrate, and be really proud of yourself for standing up and for doing what's best for you, for not letting anybody else influence that decision and making those decisions for yourself. But throughout all of that, that can be challenging, it can be taxing, and it can be a lot, especially if that is a new headspace or a new environment for you to be in, and burnout happens. So, Lisa, what do we do when burnout happens?
We talk to all of our friends. We deny the fact that we're burnt out. We just keep plugging away. No, in a very real
what?
Whoops, wrong one. This is when you get to decide, am I having fun dating? And when you're not, you take a step away. And I am very much in that space right now where dating is not fun. I am not meeting the best representation of men right now. It has, put me in this space of almost this space of lack is what it feels like. Like I'm not meeting all of these people that I want to meet. And so it kind of let me spiral a little bit into almost overdrive, trying to do more and more and more and match with people and reach out and do all of these things. And then I took this step back and it was kind of like, but I'm not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying the people that I'm chatting with. I did have a date set up for last week that I canceled day of because, again, listening to my gut, I was like, I just can't do it. I can't muster up any kind of enthusiasm about doing this. And ultimately, this dating should be fun. It should be enjoyable. There should be some sort of excitement about it. And I was feeling absolutely none of that. So, did I delete the dating apps? Not yet. I have turned off the notifications so that they don't pop up with that little red number because that gets me. I know that about myself. If I see those notifications pop up, I have to do something about it because I don't like to see them. So I turned off the notifications. I've given myself like once a day I can go in and check, just kind of see, but I'm not allowed to like anybody. Not allowed to kind of do anything on them for right now. Maybe I will. Maybe I'm trying to kind of get to a place where I can kind of forget about them for just a moment because it was feeling like I was taking up too much brain space and not in that positive way, where it was that addiction to like wanting to have more people like me, wanting to have more people match with me, wanting to have more of that, and losing myself, losing what I wanted to do, what was enjoyable to me, and just kind of wrapping up. For as much work as I've done, sometimes you get into those spaces where like I was wrapping too much of my worth and my identity in how many people were liking me. I'm like, no, we don't do that anymore. So it was a very real time for me to be like, okay, it's time to take a little break, reevaluate what it is. It's on my list to kind of sit back and look at my list again. What am I looking for? What do I want? I think I've had kind of enough off dating experiences lately where I think I've gotten away from what I want in a relationship, what I'm looking for in the person I date. And now is a time for me to step back, connect to myself again, connect to me and what I enjoy and what I want to do, and give the whole dating thing a break. I'll come back to it at some point, but this is where we have to listen to ourselves. We have to listen to what is in our best interest and know that a break could be forever, doesn't necessarily have to be forever, but taking care of your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health should be paramount to dating anybody, anywhere.
There was so much gold in what you were just talking about and with your experience. The very first thing I heard was, I canceled the date because I wasn't having fun, which is perfect because that goes up to what happens when you want a date and they don't. You were just talking about how that had nothing to do with the person on the other end of the phone, of the text. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with taking care of you. So I think that's a great point and a great thing to sit back and think about when you are trying to not take things personally. Number two, you gave yourself a lot of grace and a lot of room where you said, I haven't taken them off of my phone yet, but that's okay. I'm still looking at them, but that's okay. I step back and I'm not doing the swiping. So even if you don't go cold turkey, that's okay. There is a lot of wiggle room in taking a break from something. You take a break in whatever way that it looks like for you. And remember, have fun, go back and figure out what you want. When you're ready, dive back in. If you don't get ready, that's okay. If you do get ready, that's okay. If it takes you 1 month, that's okay. If it takes you 1 day, that's okay. And if it takes you 1 year, that's okay. So I just love how there was just so much advice in that when you're talking about your experience and what you're going through right now with the burnout.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned too, like there is no one way to like deal with the burnout. So whatever way works for you, but this is kind of like a chance to go internal. This is a chance to kind of go back to you, because ultimately, like we've been talking about, you're the only one you have any kind of control over. So tapping back into, why do I want to start dating? What was fun about dating in the past? How can I get back to that space, but without any kind of timeline? So yes, I kind of jokingly said I was going to take the month of July off of dating. And then the universe was like, we are taking the month of July off of dating. Because I kept getting these, I had friends who said some really nice things that maybe I was time to take a break. I found a couple of TikToks that popped up on my For You page. They're like, you need to be taking a break. So sometimes if you don't do it, you will get enough signs to tell you that, remember when we talked about this, we're doing this. We're taking this break, but giving yourself as much time as you need, because ultimately you don't want to be that partner who's just only kind of like half in it, who kind of like is not fully invested and excited and wanting to do that. I wouldn't want to date that person. So that's a big reason why I took a step back, was because it shouldn't feel forced. I shouldn't feel like I have to get myself excited into a specific space to want to go on a date. I should be excited to wanting to talk and meet this person that I've been chatting with, and I'm not. And if I get there, I get there. But I also know, and this has been a long time coming, I will be perfectly okay all by myself, because I enjoy my company, because I'm awesome. I got to get to a space where I can show those other people how awesome it would be to, hang out with me. We're not right there. So I'm enjoying my own company and doing my own thing.
I love it. I love it. That is fantastic. And while we will encourage you to take a break from dating burnout, can you hear that? I hear the guys yelling at them. Okay, well, we will encourage you to take you can edit that out too. I don't remember what I was saying.
Encourage you to take a break from dating burnout.
There you go. And while if you are experiencing dating burnout, we will encourage you to take a break. We will be back next week, and we encourage you to join us next week when we talk about a whole new topic and we come back into your life with more dating tips to help your love life. We will talk to you next week.
Bye.